Coming in number 10, Deadpool. Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe. What a ride. This issue was released August 2012, and just the front cover is bloody goodness. What happened here was the X-Men put Wade into the Ravencroft Asylum in attempts to heal his insanity. The doctor just happened to be Psycho Man, of course, so he brainwashed Wade with plans to shut down all of his inner voices, which worked, but now these voices were replaced with voices that were encouraging him to, well, kill everybody in the Marvel Universe. Reed then gets left all rubbery and lifeless, and it's pretty dark overall. As far as X-Men villains go, this version of Wade was made a tad more intimidating than X-Men Origins Wolverine, just a tad. Coming number 9, Storm. Aurora Monroe made her debut in Giant Size X-Men issue number 1. She's one of the more popular members of the X-Men, being portrayed by Halle Berry and Alexander Shipp. She was recruited by Charles and joined the team to save other original students from Krakoa. She was appointed leader after several years of work. In X-Men Apocalypse, we see her recruited as a horseman, but by the end of the movie she betrays him and joins the X-Men. But as far as powerful X-Men villains, I can't not look for a reason to include Storm. She's Omega, and when she's on the wrong side of the fight, it can get messy. Coming number 8, Wolverine. Wolverine has a rough past, so it's no surprise that he's gone down a few dark paths as well. In the movie Logan, for example, we see two Wolverines battle it out, and it's stressful, it's gory, and it's very upsetting the most. But I mean, that's Wolverines going at it, so it sounds about right. In the Age of Apocalypse storyline, Logan goes from being an X-Men to the Horseman of Death. Yeah, Apocalypse actually had Wolverine go against Sabretooth in order to see who would become the new Horseman. Wolverine came out on top, and Apocalypse restored the adamantium to his skeleton. Quite the deal if you ask me. To make matters worse, Apocalypse replaced Wolverine with a Skrull so the X-Men wouldn't even notice. So there's a few comics here that could blend nicely into the MCU, like Apocalypse replacing Wolverine with a Skrull. That is totally possible. With Ryan Reynolds confirming the next Deadpool would have included Logan, I doubt there isn't some sort of that coming with him for Deadpool 3. They're basically best friends in real life. Adam Sandler has like 14 of his friends every movie, so I'm holding out hope for Logan. Coming in number 7, Juggernaut. Kay Marco made his first comic book appearance in X-Men issue 12. When Kane and Charles Xavier were serving together in the same unit, but when Kane was under fire, he ran off to take cover in a nearby cave. The cave was actually home to the lost temple of Sidorak, so Kane grabbed this glowing ruby from the lap of an idol, read the inscription, and possessed the power of the Crimson Bands of Sidorak, becoming a literal human Juggernaut. After he dug himself out, he destroyed an entire village, with the previous man who held the Juggernaut mantle, Jin Taiko, getting taken out as well. We've literally seen him rip Deadpool in half, and if he's coming over to the MCU, I hope Juggernaut will as well. Coming in number 6, STRYFE. Making his debut in New Mutants issue number 87, STRYFE was the clone of Nathan Summers, the son of Cyclops and Madeline Pryor. He's a clone of Cable from the future. He has this high-tech armor, he's a telepathic and telekinetic mutant, and unlike Cable, who has to devote his psionic powers to ensure this techno-organic virus doesn't get his right side as well, STRYFE doesn't need to worry about that issue. Apocalypse wanted this child, he wanted to raise the clone himself, so down the road he could one day claim the body as his own. Coming number 5, Shadow King. Making his first appearance in X-Men 117, the Shadow King is a multiversal manifestation of the dark side of the human consciousness, spawned by the first Nightmare. Amal Farouk was the leader of the underground syndicate located in the Thieves' Quarter of Cairo, Egypt. He's a powerful mutant who also happened to be a vessel for said Shadow King. Farouk was able to control everybody around him, and it's pretty terrifying when you think about it. He feeds on the shadows of your soul, so yeah, with Marvel now veering off to the cosmic side of things, we could see a Shadow King whenever the X-Men come into the picture. In the comics before World War II, Amal Farouk worked with Baron von Strucker to try and destabilize Britain's political structure. Even more terrifying. Coming in number 4, Mr. Sinister. Dr. Nathaniel Essex made his first debut in Uncanny X-Men 221. He's not that easy to forget though once you take a look at him. He's kind of terrifying, well, to say the least. He's obsessed with experimenting on mutants, and yes, that includes himself. He was obsessed with Darwin's theory of evolution, but felt like they were shackled by too many moral constraints. He couldn't even get funding from the Hellfire Club, so he had to get together a group that he named the Marauders, and got them to kidnap people off of the streets of London so that he could continue his experiments. Guy is pretty twisted when you think about it. He even tried to experiment on his own son, who just happened to be no longer alive. A villain who resurrects the dead? I mean, the MCU could probably use that right about now. Coming number 3, Mojo. Making his first debut in Longshot issue number 3, Mojo is known for using Earth as forms of TV entertainment for the universe. We're getting close to these cosmic vibes with Loki's show on Disney+, so I don't think a live-action Mojo is far-fetched. The more viewers he gets for his interdimensional TV show, the more powerful that he becomes. So in 1992, the issue titled Mojo's Media Madness Madness had this wild storyline where Mojo gets Rogue, Cyclops, Beast, and Wolverine to think that they are characters from The Wizard of Oz. I would sell my soul to see this show. I mean, but for now, the comic will have to do. This takes place in X-Men issue number 10. Mojo is a unique villain. He's part of a race of spineless beings from a planet named after him called Mojo World, inside a pocket dimension called the Mojoverse. So this race of spineless beings were slowly going crazy over time because TV signals from another space-time continuum were scattered into their timelines. He's a powerful sorcerer, and we're not exactly sure just how far his magic can go, and I don't really want to find out, to be honest. Coming at number 2, Onslaught. Making his first debut in X-Men issue number 15, Onslaught was a sentient psionic entity created from the minds of Charles Xavier and Magneto. That's pretty messed up. So when the X-Men were fighting the Acolytes, Wolverine hit Magneto, and then in return Magneto ripped the adamantium from his bones, which, gotta say, I thought hangnails were bad. This sounds like an absolute nightmare. His healing factor had to work overtime for sure. Xavier shut down Magneto's mind, which made him catatonic, but during this moment all of Magneto's lust for hate and violence leaked into Charles' consciousness, creating this new personality called Onslaught. He now obtained the ability to tap into the psychic resources of the astral plane, where he could then manipulate matter and energy. There's also a red Onslaught, but I'll save that for another time. Last but certainly not least, our number 1 spot, Apocalypse. Esteban Noor, making his first steps in Marvel graphic novel issue number 17, was born nearly 5,000 years ago at the edge of the Valley of the Kings in ancient Egypt. He was abandoned by his tribe because of the fact that he looked, well, different. He had the Avatar look going on, for lack of a better explanation. He later was raised by the nomads with the idea that only the strong survive, a tough way for a child to think and live. He actually was killed by agents of Ozymandias, but was later revived thanks to his mutant abilities. For example, his self-molecular manipulation allows for him to alter his physical form, and he's also a genius. Even before being modified by the celestial ship, Apocalypse was already living for thousands of years. All he has to do is enter a deep sleep. In the X-Men Apocalypse storyline, we see just how big and bad the guy can get though.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Juggernaut. Kane Marco made his first comic book appearance in X-Men issue 12, when Kane and Charles Xavier were serving together in the same unit, but when Kane was under fire, he ran off to take cover in a nearby cave. The cave was actually home to the lost temple of Sidorak. So Kane grabbed this glowing ruby from the lap of an idol. Apparently he's never seen an Indiana Jones movie. He read the inscription. Apparently he's never seen a horror movie. And he possessed the power of the Crimson Bands of Sidorak, becoming a human Juggernaut. Then an explosion went off, and then Kane the Juggernaut was now trapped under the rubble, and Xavier just took off. So after Kane dug himself out, he destroyed an entire village, with the previous man who had held the Juggernaut mantle, Jin Taiko, being destroyed as well. Now at one point he joined the X-Men and accepted Xavier's offer to live at the Xavier school. After a young boy he befriended named Sammy meets his fate, Kane embraces the Sidorak energies once again and went back to his villain ways. And before we go on to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be great. It helps the studio out quite a bit. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for watching. Now back to this X-Men list. Number 9, Mystique. Raven Darkholme made her first comic book debut in Miss Marvel issue 16 back in 1978. So she's been around for quite a while, although most of her history is quite secretive. Her powers are quite interesting and first came to be when she was around 12 years old. Now one of those powers being of course that she can metamorph. So she can shapeshift into literally anybody, doesn't matter what size, age, gender, whatever the case. She's so good at shapeshifting and becoming somebody else that she can even copy your retina patterns and of course your fingerprints. So she can definitely get into your phone in numerous ways. She constantly betrays the X-Men. She's so flippy floppy. She joins the team for selfish reasons and then she leaves all over again. It's part of the thing. Number 8, Colossus. Making his first debut in Giant Size X-Men issue 1, Colossus grew up in Russia with his brother Miko and sister Alina. And when a runaway tractor was about to take out Alina, he saved her life with his powers. And then of course that got the attention of Charles Xavier. So he joined Charles in his school, and then when the legacy virus took the life of Alina, that plus the fact that he was stuck in this giant metal mode, stuck in the X-Men mansion, it was his mental breaking point. He tipped to the dark side. He left and figured the best place to be was with the Acolytes, with Magneto and Avalon. Number 7, Wolverine. Wolverine has had a pretty crazy past, so it's no surprise that he's gone down a few dark roads in his time. In the movie Logan, for example, we see two Wolverines battle it out, and it's so gory and so wonderful. But in the comic Age of Apocalypse, Logan goes from being an X-Men to the Horseman of Death. Yeah, Apocalypse actually had Wolverine square up against Sabretooth in order to see who becomes this new Horseman. Wolverine came out on top and Apocalypse restored the adamantium to his skeleton. Upgrade time, let's do it. And to make matters worse, Apocalypse replaced Wolverine with a scroll so the X-Men wouldn't notice. Now, of course, there's many more X-Men who have become Horsemen of the Apocalypse, such as number 6, Gambit. Making his first appearance in Uncanny X-Men 266, Remy LeBeau was a mutant child who was kidnapped from the hospital by members of the New Orleans Thieves Guild. So off the bat, not a happy start to his life. They referred to him as the White Devil. So before he joined the X-Men, he had a pretty shady past, and after he had become a member, it was revealed that before he had worked for Mr. Sinister, and Gambit was actually the one who was responsible for putting the Marauders into the New York sewers where the mutant massacre happened. So, okay. He was also one of Apocalypse's 4 horsemen, like I said previously. He took the place of the Horseman Death, and he even refused any sedation during this process in order to make sure Apocalypse doesn't toy with his mind. What a badass. Dude's hardcore. His original plan during this was to keep an eye on Apocalypse from the inside, but the transformation did alter his intentions as well. He ended up rescuing his old self when he remembered his love for Rogue, and he claimed he was both Death and Gambit at the same time. What a troubled man. Number 5, Bishop. Lucas Bishop. He is a time traveler from a dystopian future, and his goal was to travel back in time to the past in order to stop an unknown traitor amongst the X-Men. Interesting, very interesting. So he's come from that dark future to change it. Sounds like a good way to mix things up, that's for sure. Now this was when most of the mutant population is depowered by the Scarlet Witch. Then the child Hope was born, the first mutant born since. Well, it turns out that this kid is the reason Bishop is going back. See, that kid would end up taking millions of lives in the 6-second war. So Bishop tries to take out the child, which makes him the traitor all along. Time travel hurts my head, oh my god. So Cable, another time traveler from a different future, protects Hope. Bishop fails at taking out Hope, but he does take down Cable, creating a new future where Cable is remembered as a hero for protecting the child, and Bishop was remembered as the villain. That's tragic and also very confusing. Number 4, Archangel. Warren Worthington III. He started out as the accustomed hero known as the Avenging Angel. And then once Xavier got his attention, he recruited him as the 3rd of the 5 founding members of the X-Men, alongside Cyclops, Iceman, Beast, and Marvel Girl. He developed a pair of feathered wings that grew out of his back, giving him the ability, of course, to fly. He became a member of X-Factor alongside other X-Men, but he lost his wings thanks to Cameron Hodge. See, Apocalypse saw this and he took advantage of the hero. He brainwashed him and turned him into Archangel, the first horseman of death in the comics. He eventually broke free of Apocalypse's control, but over the years he would flip-flop back and forth into the evil hands of Apocalypse. He at one point actually had almost replaced Apocalypse after his death. Yeah, he's a force you do not want to mess with. Number 3, Cyclops. Scott Summers has been a leader of the X-Men since the beginning. He carries the knowledge that Xavier gifted him when he was a teenager. He was always struggling to control his powers growing up, and his history is pretty tragic. So when Scott and Emma became the new co-headmasters of the school, Cyclops led the X-Men, and he was doing a pretty good job. He was working to destroy this negative image that the public gave the X-Men. And as time went on, the X-Men name was being tarnished, so he thought it was best to separate mutants from humanity. Yeah, he thought he'd separate them and then rule the mutants on an island nation known as Utopia. Magneto even gives him props for uniting all the mutants. I mean, this is a big deal for him. This starts going south in the Schism storyline, where Cyclops sends out child soldiers on these assassination missions. He has the mindset that mutants need to train to be soldiers rather than students, but they're like 12 years old, so it's like, okay. Eventually the team gets divided and Scott ends up taking on the powers of the Phoenix Force, fighting the Avengers and taking out Xavier, resulting in him being imprisoned. Number 2, Magneto. Making his first appearance in X-Men 1 back in 1963, Magneto is a mutant with the ability to generate and control magnetic fields. He's a master of magnetism. He was a close friend with Professor X, but of course they came to a disagreement over the idea that humans and mutants could coexist peacefully. Like I just mentioned, he was a fan of when they got divided. He gave Scott Summers props for doing this, so he's clearly on board with this idea. And obviously, his horrible childhood makes a fair point for said argument. He always believed that mutants were superior to humans. He was the one who created the Brotherhood of Mutants and the Acolytes. He worked with the X-Men before. See, when Professor X needed to leave Earth, Magneto stepped in to take his place and teach his students how to use their powers. After this, he became a hero in a way. He was guiding these new mutants. But again, he's one of those villains that constantly flips back and forth in the comics, and I'm really hoping he somehow is the one responsible for all this madness in WandaVision. After all, now that Quicksilver is somehow in the picture from the Fox universe, one can only hope we'll see some more X-Men, and one can only wish that Magneto will come through and maybe give his daughter a little talking to. And finally, number 1, Jean Grey. The Dark Phoenix, of course, she is number 1. Jean Grey is an Omega level mutant born with telekinetic and telepathic powers. She was also one of the OG members of the X-Men. Now, seeing the potential in Jean's strength, the Phoenix Force attached itself to her while she was in danger during a space mission with the Fantastic Four. It's X-Men 101. Like literally, the issue is X-Men 101. Dark Phoenix has now entered the chat. Uh-oh. So much power. Okay, this dark, powerful cosmic force started to change her for the worse. She ended up destroying a solar system that, kind of killed billions. And then she took her own life in order to keep the universe safe. Now, a few years later, it was revealed that it wasn't actually the Jean Grey that had died. No, just the Phoenix as a separate entity that had taken over her mind and all that jazz. The Phoenix Saga is one of the biggest transformations to an X-Men member, and we even got to see all this go down on screen. Now, of course, we'd have to put her at number 1. Well, guys, there you have it. Which of these villains are your favorite? I mean, most of them are pretty flip-floppy when it comes to choosing the villain life. I could watch Wolverine fight Wolverine any day, no problem.
Number 10, Nanny. First on our list today is the partner of the Orphan Maker, Nanny, a low-level telepath that paired up with the Orphan Maker as the two thought that the parents of mutant children were just straight up evil and ill-equipped to properly raise and protect their young mutants from danger. She and Orphan Maker traveled the world searching for young mutants to take care of, killing their parents to sever any family connections, and using her minor telepathic powers to control her new charges. Dubbed the Lost Boys and Lost Girls, these mutant orphans acted as her quote-unquote new children. Her first major mission was at the State Home of Foundlings in Omaha, a facility where Mr. Sinister kept many mutant children for observation and experimentation, and she was able to liberate them after escaping the grasp of the X-Men. Fast forward a bit and we see Nanny and the Orphan Maker attack the X-Men in Australia in order to quote-unquote save them. However, this led them to being overpowered and forced to flee to see another day. During the events of M-Day, just after decimation, we see Nanny resurface once more, only to be defeated by Wolverine himself. Give her story a read for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1988's X-Factor, number 30. Number 9, Tusk. Not a whole lot is known about the early life of this Inhuman, and honestly not knowing how he turned out to be like this makes him just that little bit more terrifying. Tusk has the ability to grow in power and in size into this monstrous form, as well as the power to produce smaller versions of himself that can act independently thanks to a psychic link. Tusk served Apocalypse as one of the original recruits of the Riders of the Storm, which lasted for quite some time until STRYFE overpowered Apocalypse and the Riders served under him. Fast forward just a tad and we see the Dark Riders return when a lot of the mutant population began dying thanks to the effects of the Terrigen Mist. They went on a bit of a killing spree, getting rid of any mutant healer, believing that their powers were a violation of the natural order, and the reasoning behind that was that mutants had had their chance at survival, and that delaying their extinction was not the way to go about it. This caught the attention of Magneto and his X-Men, and the team set out to take down the Riders, succeeding after Magneto overpowered them and finished them off for good with some good old explosives. Check out Tusk's story starting with 1991's X-Factor number 65. Number 8, Bulwark. Oswald Boglin was another X-Men villain that we don't know a whole lot about, especially when it comes to their backstory, but I mean, hey, that's not the worst thing. It lets us speculate, and I for one love that. Bulwark had the ability to expand his muscle mass to unknown proportions, increasing his strength, durability, and resistance. He also wore these red leather bands all across his face and body, and it's assumed that this was done as a means of self-restraint to gauge the safe limit of his powers, as they would start to get a little bit tighter the bigger that he got. He was recruited by Emplet to join their team and torment Generation X, and that's honestly exactly what they did. The Hellions were successful in capturing the young mutants, but M had telepathically called for help, and it was answered by X-Men Bishop. M then took out all her frustrations on Bulwark, punching him through the school's biosphere, and then flying right after him. As he was about to attack M back, his muscles started to wither away, and knowing that he was defeated, he fled so that he could fight another day. Like many villains, Bulwark did not get a happy ending, as he was eventually captured by the revamped Weapon X program and was unfortunately killed. Give his story a read starting with 1996's Generation X, number 12. Number 7, Spore. Andrew Graves developed his unique mutation at a pretty young age. Now what was that mutation, you ask? Well, for starters, he had a very animal-like appearance, kinda like Bigfoot, but that's not all, because his real ability was that he was able to control people's moods and actions through pheromones. Growing up with an abusive father who forced his mother to kill herself, Andrew grew up with an intense hatred for humans, and began using his powers to make others turn on each other and kill each other. He eventually adopted the name Spore and became a member of the Acolytes, and as a member of the team, countless civilians and innocent people lost their lives. survives. For a time, he was a prisoner of Excalibur as Dr. Rory Campbell wanted to cure Spore, but during the treatment, Rory's latent hatred of mutants got the better of him, and Spore manipulated Rory into an aggressive attack on him, which gave him the opportunity to escape. Sadly though, this escape wasn't permanent as he eventually made his way back onto the island and was killed during a Sentinel attack. It was revealed later that Spore's motives for killing were a lot darker and sadder than we originally thought though. Spore just hated himself as much as other humans, and in his mind felt that killing humans was very wrong and that he therefore deserved to be killed himself. Check him out for yourself, starting with 1993's Uncanny X-Men number 300. Number 6, Barrage. Another one of the original recruits of the Dark Riders of the Storm on this list today. If you're not familiar with Barrage, he had the ability to transform his forearms into organic weapons capable of collecting ambient energy, and then firing it into powerful explosive blasts. Barrage served as an agent of Apocalypse and seemed to follow him no matter what the task was given, as he was a part of the attack on X-Factor's ship and the attack on the Inhuman city on the moon. Alongside the other members of the Dark Riders, Barrage switched sides and served under STRYFE after he was able to best Apocalypse, and they defended STRYFE's moon base from the X-Men and mortally wounded the unfit Apocalypse in combat. After STRYFE's death, the Riders traveled the world challenging any and all mutants, killing Mesmero and even their own Synapse in the process, as they were too weak to even be considered worthy of living. Barrage was one of the few members of the Riders who survived the massacre by Wolverine because he actually wasn't a part of the team at the time. Honestly, lucky him. Fast forward a bit and the Dark Riders, including Barrage, embarked on a journey to kill mutant healers after a Terrigen mist cloud was spread throughout the world, endangering mutant kind, believing that the event was to be a test of strength so that only the strongest would survive. When they attacked the healer Shen Zorn, they were caught off guard by his display of ultimate power, which unfortunately cost Barrage his life. Check him out starting with 1991's X Factor number 65. Number 5, Whiteout. Now I'm really starting to sense a pattern here because extremely little is known about Whiteout and her past. A lot of it is just, assuming and speculation. We do know what her power is though. Whiteout possesses the superhuman ability to project a flash of blinding white light from her body. This light renders her opponents blind for approximately 1 minute, and for some unknown reason her power only affects victims that she chooses, and not everyone within the range, meaning it can be used very tactically. So like I said before, a lot of her past life is speculated, but it's assumed that she has resided in the Savage Land for some time, and it was there that she was recruited by the mutant Zaladane to join her forces of the Savage Land mutants. In her only known mission for Zaladane, Whiteout and the other Savage Land mutants attacked the X-Men in Chile while they were looking for Polaris. The X-Men defeated the Savage Land mutates pretty easily in this battle, and Whiteout presumably just fled. Check out more of her for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1989's Uncanny X-Men number 249. Number 4, Fever Pitch. Real name unknown, Fever Pitch was a very handsome young man until his mutant powers manifested and he accidentally destroyed his own face. Thanks to his mutant powers, his entire body is made of an organic flame that allows him to radiate intense heat, fly, and discharge and throw explosive plasma. As the years went by and his powers became stronger, he eventually burned through his entire body, leaving him nothing more but a fiery skeleton, which ultimately led him to becoming a member of the incarnation of Gene Nation, organized and led by the Dark Beast. Fever Pitch was seemingly killed on his first mission by Nate Gray after his energy was siphoned off, but he did later resurface in Berlin trying to capture Abyss so that he could sell him off to some researchers. Now skip ahead a little bit and we see Fever Pitch classified by the government as a national security threat, as he was one of the few mutants to keep his powers after the decimation of the mutant population. He was one of the many mutants to have a tracking chip implanted in his head before a trip into Salem Center. When the chip's true nature was discovered, he had it removed by Mr. M, who he followed when he led an exodus from the Institute. Fever Pitch was later captured by the anti-mutant group the Sapien League and was injected with a dose of the Legacy virus, causing his powers to straight up overload, killing hundreds including himself. Check out his whole story starting with his first appearance all the way back in 1999's Generation X, number 50. Number 3, the Nasty Boys. Comprised of Mr. Sinister, Ruckus, Multiple Man, Slab, Gorgeous George, Hairbag, and Ramrod, the Nasty Boys were the strike force organized by Mr. Sinister to take down the X-Men. The Nasty Boys made their first appearance all together battling the X-Factor after Slab initially attacked Strong Guy. After losing this battle, Sinister posed as Steven Shafran and unveiled his plan to kill the Scarlet Witch. Shafran, obviously upset, attempted to kill him only to be killed himself. During all that, Ramrod was also deported from the country but did make his way back, illegally. Needless to say, this is a very busy group. The team was later regrouped by Sinister and they hunted Malice, who was trying to kill Polaris so that they couldn't re-merge, and they didn't stop this hunt until Malice was apparently destroyed by Polaris herself and Havoc. A while later, the team decided to reform during the final days of mutant kind after X-Man's return that ended in the death of most of the X-Men. Now it was revealed to be a bait set up by the Upstarts to lure out the remaining X-Men, which they were not aware of, and they were all promptly killed by the Upstarts. Check out these these nasty, nasty boys for yourself, starting with 1992's X Factor, number 75. Number 2. FOREARM. Michael McCain, aka FOREARM, was one of the founding members of the Mutant Liberation Front, a team of disillusioned and rebellious mutant youth. Now Michael is called FOREARM for pretty obvious reasons, but I will explain his powers a bit for you anyways. He has 4 arms, hence, you know, the name. And thanks to this mutation, he also possesses superhuman strength, stamina, and durability. Now one of their first missions under the leadership of STRYFE was to liberate the incarcerated New Mutants members Rusty and Skids, and the team broke them out of prison and the pair joined the MLF out of just straight up confusion. Skip ahead a bit and the MLF travels to Muir Island where they meant to steal the legacy virus data, but while they were there, they learned about the Xavier protocols and decided to steal them instead. The team was confronted by Excalibur though, and they were quickly teleported away empty-handed. After a second attempt to steal the legacy virus, FOREARM left the team as he felt betrayed by Moonstar, who revealed herself to be an undercover SHIELD agent. He later resurfaced as a part of a fighting championship in Madripoor called Bloodsport, where superpowered opponents fought to the death. However, in an unfortunate turn of events, FOREARM was killed during a fight with former Serpent Society member Anaconda, who just broke his neck. Oddly enough though, he was somehow able to recover from death and made an appearance as a member of the MLF once more not too long after. Give a story a read starting with 1990's New Mutants number 86. And number 1, Executioner. Now with a name like Executioner, you can probably guess what this guy is all about. Carl Denty was a field agent for the FBI whose partner Fred Duncan was a member of Charles Xavier's Underground, who would cache the technological equipment that the X-Men confiscated from alien races. After his partner's death, Carl inherited all of the equipment and decided that mutants had caused way too much damage in the world, so he donned a lot of the equipment and started calling himself the Executioner, beginning his quest to punish mutants who had not been legally convicted of their crimes. Starting off with killing the mutant tower, Denty quickly teleported away once the X-Men arrived on the scene to stop him, but he was smart and decided to teleport to the X-Mansion to kill the comatose Emma Frost. However, he wasn't smart enough because he was still stopped by Cyclops and Cable. Now none of that deterred him though, because he still continues his mission of punishing mutants. However, for a while he actually did some good as he teamed up with the Punisher in Washington DC to protect the pro-mutant activist Reverend James Conover from the Mutant Liberation Front. This act landed him the position of potential recruit for the initiative. However, who knows if he was ever actually on that team, because that was one of the last times we saw him. Check out his story for yourself starting with 1993's Uncanny X-Men Annual, number 1993.